Dara, welcome to today's podcast. I'm happy to have you as a special guest here because we both will compete in the KK coaching battle. And I thought, what better time it could be to have a chat with you? Not just because we will basically compete against each other, but also because we share a student together who is Ray. And Ray just spoke highly about you. So I was twice as keen as usually to get you on this episode. So, Dara, for those who don't know you, can you just introduce yourself quickly?
My name is Dara O'Kearney. I'm a professional Irish poker player. I guess unusually for a professional Irish poker player, I started playing very late. I was in my 40s when I even learned how to play. I've always been very competitive. I did other things before. In my youth, I played chess at quite a high level. I played bridge at a high level. I was a very good backgammon player. I was also an international ultra runner. So I've always had something that I was competitive at. And initially, I was just seeing poker as something that would be like that. It would be something I would, take seriously, play as well as I could, but I was certainly wasn't thinking about it as a profession. Things moved very quickly as soon as I moved into poker. I very quickly reached a stage where I was making more money from poker than I was from my day job. I worked in information technology for 20 years before poker. Since going into poker, I've mainly been an online player. I do play quite a lot live, though. Not to say that I don't play live. Like, I have actually cashed more times live on the Hennemod than any other Irish player, even though I started later. So play a decent volume live, but I still see myself primarily as an online player. In the last, I guess, 10 years or so, I've started doing other stuff as well. I started a podcast with my friend David Lappin, the Chip Race, 10 years ago. I've been doing more and more coaching since 2019. I've pretty much published a book every year, a poker strategy book with Barry Carter. So that's pretty much it. These days, I do split my time between still playing as much as I can, coaching, and I'm looking forward to that challenge as well. And also the writing.
You did a lot of things, which is very impressive. And for me, the most impressive was because I always do research on my guests. When I read that you ran ultra marathons, I'm like, wow, how is that possible? I don't know many poker players who have like such a interesting background, because I think running is very challenging, especially when you have like that amount of a distance, right? And the most important or most interesting thing for me is what motivated you to basically shift from being a runner to becoming a poker player, because I don't think there are many similarities.
I suppose the common thread in everything I've done is sort of this ferociously competitive drive, wanted to push myself to the absolute limit in some area. The running really kind of just started. I was in my early 30s. Again, I started very late for a runner. In my early 30s, I was out of shape like a lot of people at that stage. Not a lot of people worked in IT like I did. You spend most of your day sitting down working at a computer, so you're out of shape. So I thought, okay, I'll just start jogging to get in shape. Now, then my compulsive personality kicked in, and I just started running longer and longer distances. And initially, I was just a marathon runner. I used to run the Dublin Marathon every year. But I got better at it. My first marathon time was absolutely nothing special, 4 hours 30. But my best marathon was 2 hours and 43. So I got to the stage where I was sort of, very good at marathon running, but not quite elite. But I was getting faster and faster every year. And then at the age of 39 or 40, I think I went into the Dublin Marathon expecting to be faster again this year, and everything had gone well in training, no problems on the day. And I was actually 10 minutes slower than the previous year. So I thought, okay, well, that's just age catching up with me now. This is how it's going to be from now on. And I didn't want that sort of depressing thing of now getting slower and slower every year. So I told all my friends in my running club, right, that's it, I'm retired from running. But I'd heard about the New York Ultramarathon. And I'd always been intrigued by ultramarathons because they're longer than marathons. And one thing I had noticed as a marathon runner was that I always recovered much faster from marathons than the people I trained with. And I also finished them faster. So part of me thought, well, maybe the distance isn't even long enough for me. That might be the problem. So I ran my first New York ultra marathon, which is basically 1.5 times the marathon. It's nine and a half laps of Central Park. To my enormous surprise, I ended up winning that race.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I remember standing on the starting line looking around at all, and like I didn't know anything about ultra running, so I didn't know who the good guys were and who weren't. But there were like some very young, fit-looking guys with TV crews following them and stuff, and I assumed they were the best. And then we started running, and there was a group of 4 of us at the front, and there was me, there was an Argentinian guy, there was an Italian guy, and then there was an English guy. An English guy was dressed in a Union Jack, like a literal Union Jack, his flag. So he looked like a fun runner. It turned out he was a 2-time previous winner. So he was actually like probably the best runner in the race. So I said to him, like, what about all the guys back there who look with the film crews and stuff who look really good? Why are they not competitive? He said, no, they're all triathletes. So they're very good at triathlon, and they're doing this as training, but they're not elite marathon runners. So anyway, I was really surprised to win that. When I came back to Ireland, obviously made a bit of news here in the athletics press. There was an international 100-kilometer race coming up where Ireland were one short of a team. So the federation contacted me and said, "Would you run that just to make up the team so we have a full team to enter?" So I ran that. That didn't go very well. I ran the race with the Achilles tendon problem, stomach problems, and a chest infection. But I got through it somehow. And then they said to me, "Okay, the World 24-hour Championships are coming up as well in a few weeks." And my initial reaction was like, 24 hours? You couldn't possibly run for that long. That sounds insane.
It's getting even more and more, right?
Yeah, more and more, and particularly since I found the 100 kilometers so challenging. Now, I had recovered obviously from the chest infection and the injury, but I remember talking to my coach first of all. Shout out to Norrie Williamson in South Africa, who wrote the best ever book on distance running, The Lore of Distance Running. He said actually you probably could do it because the way those people train for that is actually very similar to the training you've been doing for years. You just have to do it more long training. And he said the other thing you have to do is you have to learn how to run and eat at the same time, which had given me enormous problems in the 100-kilometer race. And I was talking to the guys on the Irish team, and they said, yeah, it's just the kind of thing you have to practice. Your body won't do it naturally. You know, when we grow up, we're told to eat your breakfast, rest for an hour, then you can start exercising. Whereas now you have to like eat the biggest breakfast you can possibly eat and then immediately force yourself to go out and run. And you'll feel absolutely terrible the first few times you do it. And you'll probably get sick, but eventually your body will just go, okay, this is what we're doing now. We just get used to it. I think I had 3 weeks to prepare. Norrie was sending me ridiculous training schedules where like I'd look at it and go, oh, I have to run 30 miles first thing in the morning. That's pretty challenging. And then I look further down and go, oh, and I have to run 40 miles the same evening. Because basically it was all about running when you were tired. Because that's kind of the key to 24-hour running, to be able to run when you're already very, very tired. So I did very well in that race. I was the first Irishman home, even though we had 3 elite runners who would have been expected to be well ahead of me. So the team did well as well. So I was doing that for a couple of years, and then I was just thinking, like, well, you know, I'm 42 now. This isn't going to last forever. Eventually, my age is going to be a problem as well. So I need something else. So I kind of had half an eye out on what the next thing would be. And then one night on late night Irish TV, I saw the Irish Poker Open, and I was aware of poker. I had played a little bit of draw poker when I was a kid, but just looking at it, I could see, oh wow, this is a big competition. This is a big deal. It's big enough to be on TV. Which even ultra running isn't. And just looking at the people, they're all shapes, ages, sizes. So it doesn't seem like age is a major problem here. So I just thought, okay, I'll investigate poker over the next few years as my running career comes down. And my initial thought was maybe, you know, if I study really hard at this and try to learn the game, maybe I'll be able to play tournaments like the Irish Open by the age of 50, say, when my running career will definitely be over. As it happened much faster in poker. I was pretty much playing online all my spare time. And since I worked on my desk at home, there was a lot of spare time. So as I said earlier, like within a few months, I was making more money from online poker than I was from the job. I also got incredibly lucky in the first live tournament I played, which was the European Deep Stack. I basically won the tournament with 0 live experience before. Almost 0. I used to play in a local card club a couple of nights a week. Kind of reached the point where after that big result, I was obviously vaguely aware of variance, not as much as I am now, but I was aware that it wasn't just all pure skill. And actually that was the first tournament I played, because at the time I played online cash rather than tournaments. But I thought, okay, well, if I get another couple of results and online keeps going well, then maybe I'll just concentrate on this. And that's essentially what happened. Like within a few months, I had a few other results. I was still making a lot of money online. So I gradually phased out what I was doing for work at the time, and just concentrated more on poker. As you said, like it doesn't seem like there's much overlap. Like obviously there are a few things more physical than running for 24 hours and less physical than particularly online poker where you're just clicking a mouse. But I did actually find some correlation. Like one of the things that makes people good ultra runners, well, there's actually a few things. One is you just need to be, I'm not sure mentally strong is the word, maybe just mentally stubborn, where you just push through no matter what happens and just keep going. No matter how much pain you're in, how tired you feel, all that stuff, you just force yourself to keep going. And, you know, there's something similar to that in poker, particularly in tournaments. Like if they're not going well, when you're on a downswing, for example, and you're getting up every day and you're just losing, it can be very difficult to take. But I think because I had the ultra running background, I had that sort of stoical attitude of this is just the way it is. You have to push through it. There are times like this. It's all part of the process. I guess being process oriented is another thing. And then just like being able to do the same thing over and over again. Like running for 24 hours is just about running at a pretty slow pace. It's basically a fast shuffle. It's not very impressive, but you have to be able to be okay with just doing it for a very long time. And the same is true in poker. You have to be willing to sit there, and most of the time you're folding. If you're playing properly, you're not playing even half the hands. Most of the time you see the flop, you miss the flop. So you have to be okay with that. So I did find that kind of helped. At the start, I was trying to juggle the two. I was still competing internationally for Ireland, and I was obviously playing as much poker as I could. But to be honest, the poker kind of killed the running, because even though I was doing the same training, I wasn't getting the same recovery. When I was serious about the running, I was doing all my running training, but I was also making sure I got lots of sleep. I was icing all the time. I was doing yoga. I was doing all the other stuff that was necessary to sort of keep myself going. Where when I switched to poker, it was just, yeah, I'll go out, I'll do the 30-mile run, but then I'll come in and I'll start playing online poker straight away. So it kind of all fell apart.
When I did research on you, I know that you became a professional poker player very fast. And I was thinking, how was that possible? Especially with you started at 42. We will talk about this in a second. But I think the most important thing that those two, running and poker, have together is if you have a good mindset, it's way easier to become successful than if, as you said, right? If you start playing poker and you lose the first time with aces, you're like, okay, I'm quitting this game. It's not for me, right?
And yeah, no, it really is all about mindset. And ultra running is really like that because, everybody can physically run. And when I was training with other people, they would always be better than me in training. But then when it came to race day, I was better because I just had a better mindset. I was able to like get that additional effort out of myself when it really mattered. And similarly, if something went wrong on the day, if I didn't feel great or the weather was bad or things weren't going great, I was able to battle through it because I just had that sort of mental thing of just like, we're going to make this as best we can. So like mindset is super important. And I think I had that advantage when I came into poker straight away. Well, I also think I ran very well for the first year, which obviously helps. But when the inevitable downswings came or the frustrations came, I think I already had that from my previous game and sporting endeavors, that the mindset was down. And also I kind of had that attitude of it's all about the process, it's all about the preparation, and what happens on any given day doesn't matter too much, so long as the overall you're improving and you're making progress.
I'm really happy that you say this because I see this every single weekly, every single month when people come to me and they say, Karim, I study so much, but it's just not working out for me. And these are really people who know every frequency in a solver. They know like the ranges perfectly, the frequencies, the board everything, like really everything. And they never really make it in poker. And if they have the knowledge, there's only one thing that it could be the problem, which is the mindset. And then I talk with them, and then obviously they know the ranges, but as soon as they lose a hand, they start to tilt, and then they spew away money, for example, or a downswing. They're not motivated. There are many, many, many things that come together. And I'm really happy that you see this, or that you're a prime example of how easy it can be with the right mindset to make it in poker.
I see it with other players. A few years into my career, I started staking players with some buddies, David Lappin, Dara Davy, and Jason Tompkins. And we all initially thought, well, this is going to be very easy. Like we all became winning online players. We know what the process was. So all we have to do is train other people, tell them what we know, and then they'll all make lots of money too. And we'll all do very well. And we quickly found out that there's so many ways people can fail, can self-sabotage, can just not have the right mindset. It's not about the technical knowledge at all. It's by far the least important component. All the other stuff, discipline, work ethic, and above all, mindset, they're much more important.
One thing that I also want to ask you, because I'm super keen on it, is the age you started playing professional poker with. My youngest client is 18. My oldest client, somewhere in his mid-50s. When I work with people, they always ask me, is it too late? Some people ask me, is it too early? But a lot of times it's like, is it too late? So what would you tell those people who have this mindset or this question of like, is it too late? Should I start with 30, 40, 50? What would you tell them?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely not too late. There are obviously challenges with being older. I think I was incredibly lucky on one front, and that's just my wife. Like I got absolutely no pushback from her when I told her suddenly, oh, I'm going to start playing this card game and I think I can make money at it. And I don't think most wives would be like that. I think they would be, and she did admit afterwards. We had her on the Chip Race, our podcast, years later, and she did admit she was worried, but she hid it at the time because she could see it was something that I really wanted to do, to try. She also just kind of had faith in me that whatever I would try, I would be successful at, because I'd obviously been successful in a number of other areas. But yeah, I think if you're in a space where you can devote enough time to it, and if it works out, it can become your profession, then it's never too late. I mean, there are even older examples like Pierre Neuville, who started essentially when he retired from his corporate career in his late 50s, because it's a game of knowledge, and it's also a game of discipline and hard work. And if you're able to do all that stuff, and as well it fits in with the rest of your life, age is absolutely not a problem at all. There are some advantages to being young, but to be honest, the major advantage of starting at 18 is you're not already invested in a career. So you can just kind of go for it, see how it works out. I do sometimes worry though for the younger guys. Like I've been in poker long enough now that I've seen guys, start when they're 18. Maybe they do it for 10 years and then either the game passes them by or they don't want to do it anymore. But now they're 28 and I think that's actually more challenging. It's more challenging for somebody like that who's, made their living from poker for 10 years to now go back to study or to try and get a job with literally nothing on their resume except played professional poker for 10 years. Obviously, there must be some challenges because there are very few people who come in past the age of 40. I think it's mostly the other stuff in your life. Like at that stage, you probably are already going to be doing, you're in a career. The guys I know who have maybe not in their 40s, but come in later in their 30s, often it was like last resort, they lost their job or they couldn't get a job or they had some health issue which couldn't provide, and that sort of cleared the space in their life to be able to devote themselves fully to poker. Because the one thing I would say is if you do want to make it, you have to devote yourself fully to it. You absolutely have to. The learning curve now, 15 years after I started, is much steeper. I was able to just get the basic rules from my brother who was already playing, read a few strategy books, and I was crushing online straight from the start. That's not possible anymore. The amount of technical knowledge you need to pick up. Now, that said, it is easier to acquire it these days because there's more content out there. When I started, there were no solvers, so you could study on your own. The books that were there weren't great for the most part. There weren't even training videos back then. Now you can go on YouTube and there's a wealth of free content. You can go on the training sites. But the way I would describe it is like when I started, it was the kind of thing where you had to figure it out on your own very quickly, maybe with a little help from books, etc. Whereas now it's more like you have to do an intensive study course. It's not that different from going to university. You have to learn all the technical stuff, and then you have to be able to either have the mindset stuff already yourself or add it. And it's very important, I think, for people to get coaching in that area. You should be able to identify pretty quickly if you have problems in that area. And I have had students where like very quickly I go like, you technically are fine. You know all the stuff that you need to know, but the reason you're not making this is this other component missing, and you need to add that. And often people are resistant to mindset coaching because they're like, well, it's the kind of thing I should be able to figure out on my own, or they think their mindset is much better than it is or whatever. But I'm not a mindset coach, so I don't try to do that stuff. But I always encourage my students to look for it if I think they need it. To be honest, I think most of the guys I know who have tried to be professional and didn't make it, almost without fail, it was a mindset issue.
I can agree. I see it so often. I always offer a free call first, right? Just to get to know the person. And they're, in some cases, they're like close to giving up and they're like, but I still think I have a good mindset, Karim. I'm like, yeah, but we talk for 60 minutes and I have like a list of like, I don't know how many topics we want to cover. I still think I have a good mindset. One thing I want to add as well that you mentioned, when people ask me, is it too late for me to start? Only answer, and I think this is true with a lot of other things as well, is I say it's never too late to start playing poker. The only difference that I see in someone who is like 20, 21 and someone who is 40 is that someone who is 40 already has a lot of belief system implemented.
Yeah.
So that means his mindset is more impacted by his past. For example, if he tried out 3-4 things and they all failed, maybe there's a thought or his mindset is, I will never make it. I'm a loser, quote unquote. Yeah, and I will also fail in poker. maybe that's also something that he has in his mindset. So the most important thing, or the biggest difference that I see, is that the young guy who is 20, he's like, I have no clue about anything. Let me just start. Yeah, let's just like try everything out and see how things are. And the guy who is 40, he's like, life really, like, hit on me already. So that could be the difference. But other than that, if everything else is the same, that would be the only difference that I see. And that's why I think it's never too late to really start. And as you said, yeah, you're a great example, and there are many other examples that you can make it.
I think you're absolutely right. You collect a lot of mental scar tissue as you go through life. Obviously, there's some benefits to experience as well, but a lot of times there's negatives. And when you look at sports where the physical thing isn't as pronounced as other sports, you still see a more marked decline with age. Very few golfers are as good at putting at the age of 40 as they were at 20. I feel like it's because they remember all the missed putts at the age of 40. They know all the stuff that can possibly go wrong. They remember the times in the past when they missed a clutch putt, and it just simply gets to them. And I think the same is definitely true in poker. As you said, there are these ingrained beliefs that they picked up. You have to be able to strip those all away and just sort of come at it fresh. Beginner mindset is really important. And that's something I did another interview recently where I was thinking about this. Like, there are huge advantages to beginner mindset or to being a beginner, and they're essentially the mindset because you're open to everything, you're not overconfident, you're willing to rely on your gut and your instinct more, and therefore you're more observant and watchful, and you're not just defaulting back to all the technical stuff that you've already known. When I look at my age peers, let's say, and people ask me, do you think they could make it as a professional player? I would say probably not, and it's not because of their age, but it's because of all their ingrained beliefs, and they just have this certain negative mindset. Whereas the young guys, the optimism or stupidity or whatever you want to call it of youth, of like, well, everything will work out and everything will be great. As you get older, you kind of realize that not everything will work out. But you have to be able to step back from that and say, look, I'm going to give it my best. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But at least I'll have given it my best. But I think a lot of older people aren't able to do that. And then, people don't mind failing as much when they're 18 or 19 because they can try something else. But failing in your 40s hurts a bit more because at that stage, you're supposed to be successful in your career. You're supposed to have built a life, and like to try something and just fail abjectly at it. I think it's more difficult at that age as well.